Hello and welcome to the Daily Atheist. This video is the beginning of a series of videos about my book, The Anti-Theist. When I wrote the book, I didn't have a YouTube channel. Now that I do, I thought I'd go ahead and break the book down for you chapter by chapter with a new video every week. So we're going to try to drop the videos every Friday, so watch for that, every Friday. This video being the first video, we're just going to go a quickie over the chapter headings, and then I'm going to cover the prologue. So stick around for more. Before we get any further, a little safety tip. To avoid nasty paper cuts, reach up and click that subscribe button, give me a thumbs up, hit that notification bell. Always remember, safety first. Now, on with the show. All right, so here is the book up on Amazon. It's I put a new cover. I made a new cover and put a new cover up there. We've got some reviews from back when I published it. I really kind of tried to push it hard, and then I let it go for a little while. Life got on to me, and now I'm back to the YouTube thing and social media and trying to spread my brand of craziness. And here it is. This is the first chapter, the first book of my brand of craziness. So obviously, I'm against religion, in case you hadn't figured that part out. In this book, I pretty much lay out why I'm against religion. I mean, there are many different, it's just a myriad of reasons as to why to be against different religions. Actually, religion, period. And then each religion has their own various reasons why it has its own problems. Anyway, we're going to start with the chapter headings. And then I'm just going to kind of give a quick rundown, a basic overview of the prologue because, go buy the book. We don't want to cover everything. And it's free on Prime. So if you got Prime, go get the book. And even if you don't, it's like $4 or something. Really cheap. So, and then, later on as we go through this series of books, you can come at me and you go, hey, man, I read this chapter and you're wrong. Anyway, that's going to happen. I got to brace myself. It's going to happen. People will be like, you're wrong. I know. It happens. So show me where. Buy the book, show me where I'm wrong, and we'll talk about it. So here, the prologue is basically I talk about who I consider my target audience, and I talk about, let's see here, I talk about my overall viewpoint, kind of gives my general viewpoint on religion, a little bit about why I feel the way I do about religion and the logic that I put behind it. And it kind of ends with a brief anecdote. So we'll see about some of that as we go through that part of it. But the chapters themselves, let's go back here to the El Screeno. The chapters, I speak Spanish, did you? The chapters, what's the difference? Chapter 1, what's the difference? That's pretty much gives a little breakdown for those who don't know. Most people know. Some people don't know what the difference is between an atheist, an anti-theist, all those various different things. Atheist, apologists, agnostics. It kind of, in case you don't know, it kind of gives a brief rundown of what those things are. At least my interpretation of what those things are. Chapter 2. Now, see, at the end of chapter 1, it kind of talks about the difference between an atheist and an antitheist. Because not everybody who is an atheist is an antitheist. See? And not everybody who's an antitheist is an atheist. It's a strange world. And it kind of explains the differences between this. We just have so many different brands of crazy out there that it tries to wrap it up in a small package. And at least give us the difference between those two, atheism and antitheism. It starts out with definitions. Gives you kind of, so everybody's on the same page. We know what this is and what this is and what this is. And then it goes on to what it is to disprove God. Well, how do you disprove something that's right? So I talk about that in chapter 3. Chapter 4, I talk about women and how religions treat women. Chapter 4 is, without a doubt, I think my lengthiest chapter. There's just a lot that goes on, and you can imagine what I'm considered doing is beyond this point from chapter 4, maybe chapter 3 and chapter 4 on, is to pretty much write a book about that topic. Just that topic alone could cover an entire book. So disproving God, we could write a book on the efforts and the, people who want you to disprove God. They want you really bad to disprove God, and yet they take no evidence of any proof. They don't believe in any evidence. They don't put forth any evidence. No evidence matters. It's like arguing with a wall. There's nothing's going to change their mind. Some folks. So disproving God goes over that, and then God made women. Chapter 5 goes over miracles. What a miracle is. What they claim a miracle to be. I use Penn and Teller because they are just miracle workers, obviously. Go check out that chapter. That's one of my faves. And it covers how people use trickery to pull the wool over people's eyes, or have throughout history, and how some religions could indeed be the product of such trickery. Anyway, so we'll move on. Chapter 6 is obviously going to be about the devil. So, the adversary, Satan. We're going to have a book about, he was a bad guy. But wait, if God is bad, then how bad could Lucifer be? And how could Lucifer get his message out to all the angels if God is watching? And how could, if there's no free will for the angels, how could a third of them turn out? We kind of cover that in this chapter. That's what I go over again, a topic worthy of a book all its own. Chapter 7, Islam. Chapter 7 is just like a dip of a toe into Islam. Islam is very deep and complicated. Of course they all are, right? But I mean, I notice none of the others do I wrap an entire religion into one chapter. And that's just because that particular chapter is indeed my plan to be book 2 in this series, to where we cover Islam. And I thought I would just give a little, everything else in here kind of mostly covers the normal Christian Judeo stuff. A little bit of Islam, but anyway, I thought I'd give a little, that one chapter a dedication of its own. But we're going to hit it really hard in the next book because it's just such a broad thing. And not all Muslims are bad, blah, 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 blah. We get that. We know that. And we're going to cover that. Maybe not in this chapter. This chapter may go over why all Muslims are bad. I don't really believe that. Okay, some people believe that. Never mind. People are jerks. Anyway, we're moving on. Chapter 8 is good without God. How a person can be good without God. Or, one thing that is of concern is how people can be to be afraid of those people who have to have a God in order to be good. If they suddenly become convinced their God isn't real, what's going to happen? If it's always been an imaginary villain, floating above them, who's going to punish them for doing murder or rape or harm, and that imaginary creature is gone, what happens to these people? Well, we kind of talk about that, and how people like me who don't have one of those creatures floating around by me, how we get by without hurting and murder, death, kill, and all that kind of stuff. So that's what that chapter there is about. Chapter 9. Let's go back up here because you guys want to look at the screen. El Screeno. Chapter 9. I'm clicking the wrong button. Where atheists go when we die. All right, one more click and then, okay. Where we go when we die as atheistos. So that's what this covers. As an atheist, what happens to our soul? That's funny. Anyway, so that's what I talk about in here briefly because, it's a question that comes up. People often ask, what do you think happens to you after you die? Well, here's what happens to me. I get recyclated. And here's the proof. We're going to watch it. Or at least my version of it, and then other people's opinions on what those things are about. I use the word nut job a lot and batshit crazy. You might see that. Prep yourself. Again, we go into scriptures and quotes from various intellects and notary people throughout history. And now, slaves and sheep. Why would you want to be a slave? The entire premise of Christianity, I mean, sometimes they don't really... They will acknowledge it, but not always. But their whole bag is they are slaves. They are sheep to a shepherd. They are slaves to masters. And I don't really understand how they get that. And then also how black people or African American people or people who have been descendants of slavery could be religious and follow the Christian that we know of from the evangelicals and just modern day Christian Bible. How could they go for this, having thrown off all the slavery, their old masters, all that stuff, and yet throw it back on themselves with religion? Kind of escapes me how that happens, but I talk about it there in that chapter. Chapter 11, false prophets. Ooh, come sue me, Benny Hinn. Do it now. Look at this. I mean, it's bad enough that there are people out there who fall for this stuff, and then to have people capitalize so blatantly and disturbingly in public to just milk it, and it's just disturbing. And then on top of all of that, to have a government that doesn't actually do anything. I know free will, First Amendment rights, blah 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 blah, but there's got to be a line where you start hurting people. When people are sending you their money instead of paying their bills because for a thing you can't prove exists, and I mean, if I sell something to you on eBay or Amazon and I don't ship it to you, you get angry, you complain, you want your money back. If you make a prayer and you send your prayer money to Benny Hinn and you want, your son to be healed from cancer, and that prayer isn't answered, do you get your money back? And why isn't the prayer answered? I mean, he and God are buddy. That's what we cover in this, is false prophets, who they are, how they are, what they do, what to watch for, that sort of thing. The next thing, chapter 12, when I first came here and started hanging out with my buddy Mike, he's a Christian guy, and some of his friends, we had a debate, and they were really big on the whole money thing, the In God We Trust, and why it's on our money, and why blah 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 blah. And I'm like, at first I don't care. What do I care? And I was like, wait a second. Well, if I have to care, well, let's care about it. Well, I don't want God on my money because I'm an atheist, and that doesn't represent me. That may represent some people, but it doesn't represent me, and therefore it doesn't represent America, in that America isn't a Christian nation. We can go over why, and I do. Here we do. In God we trust. The things about how these states don't take atheists seriously because we're the ones with imagination problems and belief problems, and and it still goes on today. It's amazing how even in our modern society we still have discrimination against atheists by government officials, public offices. It's publicly sanctioned, stuff like that. So that's that. Now, the next chapter 13, watch your tongue. That one is we got started out with blasphemy, right? Christopher Hitchens was one of the greats. I kind of quote him about this topic because he had a really determined opinion on it. And that we need that because without the right to say what we want to say, when we lose that right and they start jailing us YouTubers, they'll do it. They do it over in the Middle East. You see YouTubers in Indonesia and other places getting arrested, thrown in jail, murdered. It happens. So we need that free speech. It's bad enough that we have the crazies out there against us. To have the government actively against us, defending ourselves, and the way we're only really allowed to do is with intellect and words, and then they're gonna put a leash on that. That's they're asking for violence. Not that atheists obviously don't go around this. We're not really known for that sort of thing, but oddly enough, word or religion. Violence would ensue. We would be blowing people up whenever they told us we couldn't blah, 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 blah. But anyway, that's what that one's about. Blasphemy and why we need to be able to do it. Chapter 14. Okay, so religion is... it's got its good points throughout history in its influence on music and literature and art. You can't... you could say the same thing about sun worship, and that sun worship and stuff like that gave us some of the greatest cave art and petroglyphs. That doesn't mean that the sun is God. So just because people created good Christian art or good Muslim art, Islamic art, good Hindi, it's still beautiful. It's the creation of man and their thing. But with chapter 14, what we're talking about is how in language, religion has influenced our language and how we use things for, God bless you, and, Jesus, that scared me, whatever. So I may have said something to that effect, but that doesn't mean I believe in Jesus now. It's just, an instant, because I was raised in a certain way, blah, 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 blah. You would think that if one of those ancient God things was real and his name was one that you naturally called out, right? Then it would be universal. Everybody would call it out the same. Who knows? God's true name may be, actually, come to think of it, that's a whole nother story. Allah, go back to chapter 7 and look at Islam, and they talk about Baal and Baal and Ah. Maybe that's where they got it from. That's just a natural. See, there you go. We find truth in that. I need to hit my Muslim buddies up and say, hey, here's my theory. God's name, so blah, blah, blah. See? But anyway, I don't want to start a fire. Anyway, so to turn a phrase is how throughout our language we have picked up things, or because of the influence of religion, we've picked up things in our language that's actually pretty cool and I like, and the phrases I use and things we do and all that because of religion. Now, I would shed those things if it meant we could get rid of religion's influences throughout history. I would indeed go, yes, we should sacrifice all that beautiful art that came from it if we could have those intellects back who were executed, burned at the stake, whatever. So, yeah, but anyway, beyond that. Now, chapter 15, creationism and junk science. Creationism is like the wannabe of, they're like pretending to be real science so they can try to debunk real science and look professional and real about it, but they're just nutbags. I'm sorry, if you're creationist and you can't back your stuff up, a lot of times the creationists I've spoken to, they just ignore real, actual scientific proof and data. It blows my mind. I could get it if it was just one piece of scientific evidence or data, or, maybe even a small outlier of scientific data, but to just disregard all the millions and millions of pieces of evidence that we have throughout the museums and libraries, and just it's a little bit on the ludicrous side, and there's no magic to it. You can go learn to know how to determine these things. You can go learn how to do the strata and the soil or whatever. There's no secret to it. Occasionally these guys will pull up something where they're claiming that their creationism is true based on this. They might say there's a dinosaur's footprint by a man's footprint. And they got one of those, maybe even two. And that's their outlier. And then, that's their whole thing. They base all the rest of that evidence is just crap. And rather than going with a skeptical eye, what could be wrong here? Is it possible that something happened and these two layers got overlaid somehow? Or rather than applying their skeptical eye on that, they try and apply it in crazy manners to really gymnastics and kind of flex their way around all the other real science that's there. And then lying about or disproving or not disproving, but disregarding actual science and that's just their whole bag. And I think people who do that are just moving on. The morals of God, chapter 16. In chapter 16, we talk about what God does. Now, people talk about what the devil's done and what this person has done and what that person has done and religious, blah, 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 blah. But this talks about how, obviously, God, especially the Old Testament and those books, the further back they were written, the more violent and ugly they are. Well, I'm sorry, except for Islam, because Islam's pretty, at first it was, here's what it was. really fast. Judaism was really hard. You had to do a lot of stuff, and you had to do a lot of sacrifice and a lot of crap, and it was really hard. And some people were like, dude, let's do hard. Let's do easier stuff. So they come up with Christianity and made it softer. Or that's what they thought. It was actually softer. But then the Islamic people, Muslims, Muhammad decided we needed to be hard again. Christianity is too light. We need to be hard. The harder, the better. So it kind of went hard, soft, hard. That's my quick rundown. Anyway, moving on. So this talks about how the morals of God. Sure, in the New Testament, Jesus kind of waxes on a bit about good things, but it's kind of hard to make up for all the things that God did in the Old Testament, because God was like a horrible, evil God monster. And I refer to him as such throughout this book, the evil God monster of Abraham, for obvious reasons. If you go look at the book with an objective eye, if you're looking at it, it doesn't, there's the whole notion of fearing your God. And go read the Bible. We've got the modern day Christians have got this lovey-dovey, powder puff girl version of Jesus Christ. But man, that's not the way it's supposed to be. If you go read the text, that's not the way to go. They can twist it the way they want to, and they will, but go read the text. And the modern day Christians are like, oh, Jesus did everything. We're all good. We can just blah, 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 blah. It doesn't matter. I'm like, anyway, the morals of God are horrible. God taught people how to crush babies' heads. That's what God did. God murdered children over and over and over again, all throughout the Bible. And God influenced and made other people murder babies. So, if God is Jesus, Jesus murdered babies. So, that's it. It's just, God is a horrible moral example. And I challenge any Christian to talk with me on that one. We'll go through that. I have no problem using your book against you to demonstrate how forced incest, is good and blessed in God's eyes. I can show that. So just bring it at me and we'll talk about that. I get kind of excited about that one. Angels, demons, and jinn. Because we have angels and demons, and you know what they are. And if you're not familiar with the Muslim religion, they have the jinns, and they're kind of like, I don't know. In the beginning, before the moon cults of Saudi Arabia were taken over by Muhammad, and he turned them into a single monotheistic religion, partially based on the Judaism. Before all that, they had the jinn. The jinn were like bad guys, but good guys. They could help you. They were like, let's just call them angels of the desert, sort of, but of fire. So if an angel is of air, a jinn would be of fire, and man is of dirt, right? So that's kind of the deal. This chapter here goes over angels, demons, a little bit about who they are, what they are, how they've changed over time, and what a jinn is. And because jinns become genies, genie in the bottle. We, on our side, the Christian side, I say our side because I was raised Christian, we, kind of made light of the jinn. And it made it a funny thing. It's the genie, right? Will Smith, blue genie. But the Muslims, or at least their antecedents, the moon cults of Saudi Arabia, really took the jinns quite seriously. So that's what that chapter is about. Chapter 18, God hates sex. I mean, clearly. I don't know why. I mean, you would think we would have noticed the indicators whenever he put the recreation department so close to the shit house, that he being God, had a problem with procreation and sex. Work that one out in your brain on your own. But it's just that for some reason, throughout the Abrahamic religions, they have a problem with sex. I'll tell you what it is, a conservative mindset. The conservatives, blah, 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 blah. They just have problems with certain things and it just carries over. Anyway, people in the dirt. God hates sex. It just, in this chapter, goes over why God has sex, the differences, and what happens, and the subjugation of women, and what men do to themselves, and what they do to children, and what religious nutbags. I mean, so there's things going on there about God hates sex. That's pretty much all right. And then there's the faith healing chapter 19 on faith healing. It's another sham. It's scary. It's a testament to the poor education of our country and our society, and that people can spew this nonsense and people believe it. And the people who spew this nonsense aren't punished harshly enough. They need like some serious punishment. Forced education, something, I don't know, but something needs to happen to these people who go around doing these things that harm people. They harm people and they don't seem to care. They're psychopathic in their lack of concern or care for the people that they harm. They have no problem hurting these other people. So clearly we don't have enough rules and regulations to keep these people in the strapped coats they need to be in, because they're still out on the streets. They're out there making livings, big fat livings, doing this faith healing, and it really needs to stop. It hurts people, and it needs to stop. So, and then chapter 20 is essentially about the evolution of God, how over time it's changed, and people used to believe this, and now they believe this, and now they believe this, and God has so many faces, and there's some people who like to come at you, and they'll be like, well, there's one God, and he has all these faces. See, and that's what they argue. And yet, for some reason, almost every one of these faces of God tells you that if you worship another face of God, it's going to kill you in the afterlife. So, why would God do that if that were the case? That's not the case. God, the God of the Abraham, is not the God of the Pharaohs, is not the God of, they're not the same. Despite what they may be based on the same imaginary characters that some people brought up. Clearly, the Jews, the Israelites, really took some of their writings and influence from the Egyptians. Whenever we talk about like Abram and Abraham and Sarai and how they went to Egypt, and that's where we got circumcision from and things such as that. There was a lot that the Old Testament and the Israelites took from Egypt. So that they took their God from there, but then their God tells you that you can't worship that God. And that God tells you know what I mean? So to claim they're the same is just crazy. We can shoot that down in a heartbeat. And then our last chapter has kind of been about a little bit of, all right, so basically what this last chapter is about is that in life you see all these people who are so bad, and yet they succeed throughout life. They don't care, they're psychopathic, they hurt people, and yet they make money and they live. And they're not religious necessarily, but they're evil and they succeed. And yet people who are good and pious and sweet and believe in God, they have to go through the trials. And, there's like, oh, yeah, they're going to suffer a little bit through this lifetime for the eternity of afterlife, which you can't prove. Or, these people are living it up, sure, but they're going to burn in hell for eternity. That's just crap. It's foolish crap that somebody would pawn and believe that. And then you're going to bend your life in the dirt and think you're doing it piously, and you're gonna be rewarded for that because of this. This is, but there are those people such as myself. I'm not affluent or anything, but I was raised dirt poor in West Texas, but I didn't have that bad a life. I didn't have a childhood disease. I didn't have polio. I didn't have none of those things. It was really bad. I grew up strong. I never got in a horrible car accident when I was young, and just all the things that never have left a pretty decent life. And blessed, I dare say, and yet I'm an atheist, and I speak out against God. So if God were real and his power were real, then those people who believed in him would flourish, and the people who do not would not. But that doesn't happen. That's just kind of, as my Muslim people come over here and slaughter your Christian people, you're thinking, well, dang, wouldn't the God save them? Oh no, it's just that, But then turn around, same thing happens. These Muslims are sitting over here, and here come these Christians, and no invisible God comes out of nowhere and just stops them from it. No, they just slaughter them all, and slaughter and slaughter and slaughter and slaughter and slaughter. And we never have reports of divine intervention, a certain people, stuck up on the mountain. I can't remember their name right now on the top of their head in my head, but they're stuck on the mountain trying to get away from this other group of Muslims, and the Muslims are all trying to kill them. They literally want to exterminate them, because that's how it works when you get closer to the core of Islam. They want to exterminate these people, and they've got them pinned all up on the top of this mountain, and you don't hear about how God comes in and saves them. No, what you hear is how these people get slaughtered. That's it. There's no magic, nothing like that. I mean, there might be, here comes America and stop them and help those people out, right? Because God obviously wasn't going to. But and you could say, that was God's way of helping them out. Really? Well, how many people died before America got there? Before America got, So your arguments in those departments are just weak and puny, and they don't hold up to nothing. So anyway, their arguments, not your arguments. If you're watching this, you're probably on my side. So that's pretty much book one. A little rundown of the chapters. I'm going to try to, I'm new to this, I'm going to try to take and make a video every week about a chapter. I might not, I'm going to think about this first week and see about, because, most of you guys, I suspect, what the difference is between an atheist and an agnostic and blah, 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 blah. But you know what? Maybe I need to make a quick video on that chapter, just so for those folks who don't. So I'll probably do that, and I'll be trying to release them every Friday and see where we go from there. Obviously, there's 21 chapters, so we got like 20, 22, when you count the prologue. That's 22 whole videos. Hopefully, I'll be coming at you every week. So thank you for checking out this video on my prologue, on my book, and my book, The Atheist. So check that out over on Amazon. If you've got Amazon Prime, it's free. If you don't have Amazon, it's nearly free. It's very cheap. I'm not really selling it for the money as much as I am the clicks. You know what I mean? All right, that's it. Thank you very much for joining me as I talked about my book and ranted about my craziness. I know it went on a bit long, but that's just a Cliff Notes version. Just wait. We're going to go over each chapter, and it's going to be a lot of fun. So thank you for your time. Don't forget to like and subscribe and hit the notification bell. Thumbs up. If you're seeing this on Facebook, subscribe, not subscribe, share, spread my nutbaggery. Thank you very much.